Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Jamie Widener here with Chad Thomas. Welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Lens. Hey, Chad, what's going on? How you been?
Oh, I've been good. Busy, but good, you know. I'm starting to work on the Halloween episode, Jamie.
Ooh, it's happening.
hmm So,
Excellent.
so yeah.
I'm really excited for that one. We had quite an evening of fun, so I want
Yeah.
everybody to see that one.
So what have you been up to?
Oh man, working, living, all the good stuff. Lots of them, a couple weekends in a row of investigating and getting back into the swing of things. The brewery was hopping again this weekend, so that was fun. And like just life,
Yeah, I got that really cool recording from
Yeah.
brewery. I wanted to get that loaded up so we could play later, but I didn't get to it. So,
Okay. Because you're
uh,
busy doing everything else you got to do. I
yep.
know.
And hey, Kyle,
Hey, Kyle. Yeah,
looking forward to seeing Kyle in a couple weeks. I don't know if you know, but I'm doing another
that's
trip to
right.
White Hill.
Yep. I heard a rumor.
So,
Very cool.
so yeah,
Well, you want to get into it? And
sure, why not?
all right. So we're tonight. We're going to talk about a thing called the Alaska Triangle or Alaskan Triangle. I think everybody's familiar with the Bermuda Triangle, and that is connecting. Get the next slide. It's connecting the points of Bermuda, the island of Bermuda in the Western Atlantic, all the way down to Puerto Rico and all the way back over to Miami, Florida, or parts that are around it. So it makes this odd triangle. I should probably remember the triangle names from math and stuff, but yeah, um, it's a triangle. Um, it's one of those kind.
It's not
So
equilateral. It's not isosceles or any of those.
and after that, I'm gone. I'm done anyway. So whatever. It was a long time ago. Um, the these 3 points of connection, the things that happen within are planes disappear, ships disappear, anomalous readings on instrumentation, and the things that go missing are never found. We're on the East Coast, so we know this pretty well. However, there is a very similar kind of concept happening in the big great state of Alaska. If we go to the next slide. So the connection here is Anchorage to the south and west, Juneau all the way down to the kind of the arm that connects off the peninsula side of it that comes down to the far east, and all the way up to Barrow, which is up above the Arctic Circle. And this is a different kind of triangle, name wise, but these connection points, the things that happen within, are very similar. Anomalous activities, people go missing, planes go missing, wonky readings on instrumentation, people having odd feelings, disorientation, things like that. But before we get into some of that, I just want to point out that Alaska is twice the size of Texas. And I see Erica Bergen's with us. So, Erica, you know exactly how big Texas is. And then you imagine 2 of them. So the mass of the state and then the size of this triangle is basically the size of Texas, which is huge. And it takes days at times to get across, 2 days to drive across it, kind of thing. So it's quite massive. And therefore, a lot of things can happen in such an open space. It is also one of those places where there's a lot of wild and untamed areas. There are mountain ranges, there are glaciers, there's all kinds of stuff, and not a lot of access points. Not a lot of paved roads going to places, so people get out there and crazy things happen. So the first major or significant disappearance that really made national news happened back in 1972. In fact, October 16th of 1972, when a plane going from Anchorage to Juneau went down and was not found. And the reason this is important is that it was carrying 2 elected officials. One was House Majority Leader Hale Boggs, a Democrat from Louisiana, and also Representative Nick Begich, who is a Democrat from Alaska. And the reason Mr. Boggs was there, was because Mr. Begich was having trouble with his campaign, and he wasn't faring as well as he wanted to. And being that the majority leader, Mr. Boggs, Representative Boggs, had some clout, and he was coming to help boost his campaign. And unfortunately, their plane goes down with the pilot and also a staff member along with them. That happened again on October 16th. never to be found. And by December 29th of 1972, all 4 members of that craft were declared dead and missing. So it made the news. And all of a sudden, then stories started coming about other things that happen in this area that's now become known as the Alaska Triangle. And what's interesting, they spent a lot of time. 3,600 hours were spent on the search for him, for the plane, for Boggs and Bigot. 39 days worth of time, and that all the resources that went into it. That was quite an extensive search. There we go. Next slide. Thank you. You're doing better on the slides than I am. That's for sure. One of the most interesting. This is both of them, of course, and the plane they were in was a Cessna 3100. So a small plane, mind you, but one that's very, very reliable and flown all over the place. So not something where it should have been expected. And fairly clear weather when the plane went down as well, or whatever happened to it. So, of course, some things that come out of this, there's, I'm going to give you a conspiracy theory alert here, but Boggs was a member of the Warren Commission. And if you remember, the Warren Commission was created to investigate the assassination of JFK. And they offered an opinion, it was lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, but Boggs had a differential opinion, and he disagreed with the outcome of the report, hence a conspiracy that he was taken down because of his dissent against the report of the findings of the government, which I think is kind of interesting. And a fun fact, and it's a grim fun fact, but because of this disappearance, planes after this year, and actually it took till 1974, but planes started to be mandated to have transponders. And this is also where black boxes kind of came into play, being mandatory on all flights, big and small. So every plane now has to have a transponder. Should it go down, that transponder will flip the position of that craft wherever it is. Of course, the black box is the data recording of all of the instrumentation reads of the plane and the exchange of dialogue, the pilot and the whatever ground crew there are. So a big deal. These 2 gentlemen going down, especially Mr. Boggs, this was a big deal back in the early 70s, but things that had been happening long before then in this area. So going and jumping a little further, and this is where the metric of measurement started back in 1988. And since then, more than 16,000 people have gone missing in this area that is the Alaska Triangle. That equates basically 4 of every 1,000 people in the state go missing annually. So that's doesn't seem like a lot, but because there's not a lot of people in Alaska as much as there are populations in other states, but it does matter when the population is lower that this is still happening. And that value is more than double the annual rate in any other state in the nation. So whatever is going on here is significant, and it's happening at a higher frequency than anywhere else. So what is the Alaska Triangle? It's an area that includes roughly 60 glaciers, and an interesting fact as well, and this is as of this year, but back in 2011, there were actually 2,700 active glaciers. So, anybody for global warming, there it is. This is quite an interesting stat. There are gazillion mountain ranges. There are dense forests still. There are swamps and bogs. There are plenty of rivers. There are actually over 1,200 rivers in the state, or 12,000, rivers in the state. So you think about, people trying to cross and ford a river without a bridge because there are none, they get washed away. All kinds of things can happen. And actually 17 of the 20 tallest peaks in the United States are in the state of Alaska, as well as over half of the nation's federally designated wilderness are in the state. So, there's a lot of wildland out there still, and a lot of places that are not easy for people to getting through and across. There's extreme weather. Obviously, glaciers. You're dealing with the Arctic Circle. There are blizzards. There are torrential rain. There's flash flooding. The glaciers themselves have crevasses that are some as big as a room, some as big as a house. So, in the upper right-hand picture, here you see someone standing on the edge of one of them. Should that edge give, that person's gone and they may never be found. Same thing with winter weather. People get out there, they want to go skiing and do some of the extreme things that you can do in the weather. However, they get whited out, and then just they lose their bearings. Things happen. It's quite happens often. So next slide. There's also a lot of wildlife, grizzly bears, wolves, moose. Every time I see a moose, I want to be like, moose. Uh, there's also squirrels, just in case you're interested in Rocky Bullwinkle, bobcats, cougars, and caribou. And there are way more caribou in the state than there are people. So there's a lot of wildlife out there. And of course, in nature, everything is out to get us. So these creatures are no exception to that. There's lots of stuff. I'm saying a lot of things here, right? Because there's physical stuff, right? So the reasons that people can disappear in this area, the loss of bearings, you get into dense fog, you get into heavy snow, you all kinds of reasons, so you're going the wrong way all of a sudden, and then you're lost, and something gets you. In the winter months and the mountain ranges and such, there are avalanches to deal with, wild animal attacks, and which is much, much more prevalent than anything. A case in point, there was a gentleman named Gary Sutherland, who went missing in the early 1970s, around the time that the plane went down with Mr. Boggs and Mr. Begich. He was out on a hunting trip, in early 70s. In 1997, a hunter found a human skull and reported it to the police. Now, mind you, this is 27 years later, okay? 72 to 97. The skull was set aside. They had nothing they could do with it. In 2022, DNA testing discovered that it was his skull, and the police tied this to a bear mauling. So, but that's what was found on the skull itself. So, a case here, this fellow goes missing, an animal attack. The animal eats the person, leaves very, very few things left of him. But luckily somebody came along and found him. I'm assuming this is going to have to happen at some point elsewise as well down the way. And also weather episodes, as much as animal attacks. You get stuck out in the weather, flash flooding, you get washed away, blizzards, you can get snowed in, and your tracks are gone by that point. And electrical storms, people get struck by lightning and exposed elements, and then dense fog as well. As I mentioned earlier, you lose your bearings and you're going the wrong way, and then you become out in the elements. So a lot of rational, reasonable things, right? However, there are some unlikely reasons why people go missing in Alaska as well. And this is the paranormal lens side of it, right?
Tell us more.
Yeah, right. So the first one, and it seems pretty obvious perhaps, but UFOs, right? Aliens. A case in point here is back in 1986, a Japan Air Flight 1628 was flying over the region. They reported 3 unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, which would now actually be reclassified as a UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, flying parallel to their plane and making bright bursts of light for approximately 400 miles, and then they just disappeared. Poof. And that's quite interesting, right? Especially now with all of the stuff we've got coming out about the government finally acknowledging UFOs exist, UAPs exist. The upper left image is the Tic Tac video capture of that. But the second part of that is, if UFOs exist, and there may well be alien abductions, and that would explain why people go missing. And Travis Walton, the Fire in the Sky story, down in Washington State, not far really, is a good example of what might have happened to some people as well. And people are out there alone, so it'd be easy pickings. There are things called energy vortexes, and these are and that's the upper right picture, but kind of the swirl of energy that occurs. Believe it or not, this is it's not documented truth. It's believed that clockwise vortexes allegedly they will create a positive emotion in humans, while clockwise ones will create negative feelings and confusion, which would also allow someone being disoriented to drift in the wrong direction. In some areas of the Alaskan Triangle, the compass readings can be off by as much as 30 degrees, which is a significant thing too, because you're trusting your compass, and if it's having a malfunction, you think you're going east and you're really going north. 30 degrees isn't that drastic, but you are going in the wrong direction once again, and going further and further perhaps from where you need to be or where you think you're going to wind up, and then you get trapped in the elements of exposures. Mm-hmm. One thing I really think was interesting is a wormhole or a portal. as a person passes through a certain area, all of a sudden a wormhole opens. They don't realize it. They step through it, and then they're somewhere else. Another dimension, perhaps, another space and time, another planet. Who knows? And I did borrow that bottom left picture from Marvel and Doctor Strange. So hope we don't get sued. Our good friend Bigfoot, right? Yeah. What else do I have to say about Bigfoot? Bigfoot's Bigfoot. He's the leader in playing the hide and seek forever. So, but there's been plenty of sightings and reportings of Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest and southern Alaska through the millennia. So, definitely something that could be there, especially with as much rugged and wild terrain as there is. There is a show, I'm going to say it's on Travel, perhaps I'm wrong, Expedition Bigfoot. They're currently in Alaska this season. I thought that was rather interesting as they kind of work their way up through the Pacific Northwest last season to get to this point. So, and some compelling evidence has been, at least some stuff they found is pretty interesting. So, of course, no one, and this is what we say at the brewery all the time, Chad, there's not going to be a ghost that walks out of the wall and introduces themselves. Bigfoot's not going to step out from behind a tree and say, "Oh, you got me," Right. So it's a lot of diligence involved in that process. But the reportings are that. And one thing that I thought is really, really interesting is the last one, which is called a kushtaka. This is a shape-shifting demon from the Tlingit Native American lore. This is said to be a cross between a human and an otter. And that's the bottom right picture. So it has an otter's head, a human-esque form or humanoid form. And Kushtaka roughly translates into land otter man in the native language. It is said that he often appears as an irresistible form, likely a child in distress, to lure its victims into the local waterways. And once in the water, then they are drug in and killed. And once you become a victim of the Kushtaka, you also become one as well. That might be a whole nother episode someday. And for somebody who doesn't swim well, maybe that's interesting for me as well. So I don't know, but there's a lot of that. There's the a couple other things. The hairy man, which is a variant of Bigfoot. There's another version of the Loch Ness monster in one of the lakes, which when we did the first episode of this whole series, we did. Way back when was on Ogopogo. Right. And I remember vividly asking Dave the question of, longitude and latitude, where we are in the world with the kind of the lower Canadian area, thinking going across as we were talking about Loch Ness and as we were talking about, oh my gosh, the lake, the Great Lakes monster we have as well. And I think it's Lake Erie. It's kind of all on the same line. Here we are with this lake in Alaska where this is supposed to be as well, is more closely aligned, going around on a straight line to Scotland. So, could it be a geographic thing with the climate of that region and the moderation of temperature and so forth, a colder water environment, stuff like that. Right. We don't hear about these very often, at least in the equator and the center of the Earth, so the middle of the Earth. So it's interesting that there's other stuff there too, and there's much, much more. So not a whole lot of time to get into all of that. So it takes me to some thoughts, right? And here's where I want you to step in as well. But many tourists, and let's go to the last slide, just back to the beginning, basically. Right. Many tourists arrive in Alaska expecting adventure and excitement, and they become victims of their own lack of experience or preparedness. You don't know what you don't know. Right. And, I'll say this to sound like an old man that I am, but, you can only get so much from watching YouTube videos and stuff like that versus getting your boots on the ground and actually being in the space. So people don't know what they're getting into, and then until they get there, and then it may be too late. Some people go to Alaska just to disappear, and live off the grid. There's a lot of, going to the TV world, there's a lot of shows about that. The Alaskans, there's Alaskan Bush people. There's probably 5 more that I can't think of off the top of my head. But, people want to live off grid. They want to be left alone. They don't want to come in unless they need something. And a lot of times they're homesteaders, so they can figure it out themselves. They're very ingenuitive people. They make it work. And therefore, they seem like they disappear. And intentionally they do. It's kind of sad, but it's very conceivable that people go there to end their own lives. They don't have much left. Perhaps it's terminal situations. I don't know. Obviously, but there's that consideration as well that is an intentional act to get there and not come back. Extraordinary natural beauty still comes with extreme risks. So again, going back to preparedness, you get there, you don't really prepared for the elements or the environment. Obviously, people go out without protection, a weapon, and an animal attack may happen. Because they are called wildlife for a reason. So, and I never get tired of seeing the idiot videos of people who are out in like the West, where there's a drive-through area with buffalo or bear, and somebody gets out and tries to walk up to one, thinking it's a fuzzy toy kind of thing, and they get knocked on their butts. Hopefully that's all that happens. But the bad stuff that can happen. People think these are furry friendly things, but they're absolutely not. They will hurt us. It's their world. We're now visiting. Natural phenomenon can and does exist. There are still vastly unexplored areas out here that we don't know what's in it. So there might be something that's the vortexes of the world, of the things, or the magnetic anomalies. They certainly can exist. I'll go back to the mystery spot episode. There's definitely documented spaces in our very densely populated world that there are crazy things happening that we can't explain. So why wouldn't it be happening in this vastly unexplored, wide open space as well? I'm sure there are probably many, many more spaces like the mystery spots that exist that we just haven't found yet. So here we could have something very large. Given the rugged, unexplored territory, this could be a place where UFOs come to be undetected. So it could all be something that's otherworldly that's going on there. And people are getting plucked away because they found something they shouldn't have. Who knows? It could be a government installation. We want to be conspiracy theorists. That it could be something out there that's us doing it to each other. Somebody stumbles onto something they shouldn't see, and then they don't make it back. I don't want to believe that, but certainly it's not outside the realm of possibility. And in the spirit of that, there could be very large and undocumented cryptids living out in a space like this still. Again, we'll go back to the lake monsters, and it's in that climate zone where there seems to be something happening around the world, either in the north or the south. Maybe there is a place where Bigfoot or Kushtaka could exist without disruption from us. It's quite interesting to think it could. And the thing for me is, there's so much more out there than we'll ever know. And I like the fact that we have unexplored territories in the world. And I think we still need to have these places. And it's not much different if you were to move over to the Yukon, which is the direct connect Canadian province. Some places that are just not populated yet are really great to have, and we need them. To have the buffer from the dense population that we have in our urban sprawl. Right. So it's as much as I don't want to see people go missing. I do think we need to get to the places like this too, just because we need that separation.
So, hey Jamie, on that note, I want to pull up another map that I found. It's a population density map of Alaska.
Yeah, this would be interesting. It's one spot.
Yeah, I mean, which is one corner of your map there.
Yep. It's like Anchorage and
Anchorage is there when sort of at the top of that long peninsula. There's one city in the middle of your triangle that has a population of over 5,000.
Yeah, Skagway.
What's that? Is that
Skagway?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is less than one per square mile.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all on the coast except for like Skagway. There's a few larger communities inland, but there's not much because there's no roads. And those are Skagway, if I'm not mistaken, is a tourist destination for like cruise ships to go on inland excursions. Hence why it's become a bit more of a thing. And therefore it's also somewhat seasonal. Not much happens in the winter there, obviously, because you're going to get icebound and snowbound. But and it goes to that, everybody, and this is how we were founded, as far as, America, everybody was on the East Coast all at one time. And that's why that's why we're all so packed in so tightly, and we didn't plan very well for all of the expansion and sprawl that we create. Here, that's the same thing. They found the southern coast first, because sailing up from, the west coast of the US and Canada, and then eventually venturing somewhat inland, but the elements don't allow for much exploration. And the creation of roads is challenging because of the territory that it is. So there is a very interesting show on the Travel Channel called The Alaska Triangle. It's now in season 2. So if anyone wants to see more of the direct stories and a lot more of the information around it, I really recommend it. I think it's on Wednesdays or Thursdays, something like that.
Not Tuesday nights. No.
Not Tuesdays at 9. That's a bad time to watch anything else. There's nothing good on, so except for this. Yeah. Or whenever you watch us. But it is something that's out there. And I've caught a couple episodes around the way. And these things always intrigue me because they bring in a team of what I'll call experts. It's like you and me showing up somewhere, right? Somebody has some knowledge, though, of what they're going to discuss in that episode, and they do the reenactments. And so it's a typical paranormal show in that sense. But the vastness and the beauty of the Alaska really shines in these episodes, and how unique it is to be what it is, because you can't just roll in and roll out real quick. They plan these episodes out. That's really cool. So I don't know that this is a paranormal or not episode, or haunted or not episode, Chad, but what are your thoughts after we get
I guess
20 plus minutes of stuff?
I guess one of my questions is, do you know what the percentage of are there a lot of things where it's planes that are lost, avionics aren't working, things like that? Obviously people missing, like Amanda said at one point, it's just such a big barren place. It's easy to get lost. And if you're lost, there's nobody to find you. That population map showed that in a square mile, there's one person. The chances of being found are slim to none.
I can't lie to you, though. That sounds pretty nice,
Well, yeah, there are times.
Depends on your neighbors.
But
there's no cup of sugar to go borrow.
Yeah, but any idea, is there a high percentage of stuff with the avionics and compasses and stuff like that, or not? Do you know?
It is. There definitely is compass anomaly. With avionics, though, the world has changed drastically with the advent of global satellite positioning, stuff like that. The constant awareness, and also having transponders and such on planes, you can be found a lot easier. So it's not been as much of the malfunction issues as it is more like people on the ground, and some of the, in the very southern corner as well, it's the boats go missing as well.
Okay.
But I think that also is a lot more to do with not knowing the waters, the area, an untrained person going out. We're right next to the Susquehanna River here. And if I, as a novice boater, if I go out there and I just start plowing through places, I'm going to run into sandbars and rocks and things that everybody else who, channels where other people know where they are, I don't. And I'm going to ground my boat. And if I ground it and I hit enough of a rock, it's going to go down and I'm stuck.
Right.
I'll probably go with it. So,
but the difference there too is you're in a river that's fairly warm. If you go down in the Aleutian Sea or any of that,
you're done. Your hypothermia kicks in. Same thing. But that's also, so in the spirit of getting from Anchorage up to Barrow, and that's there's two options. It's either you fly or you take a boat. You're not driving across the state. There's just not enough road structure, at least, especially in odd season stuff. In the summer, you might be able to make it if you have an ATV or an all-terrain vehicle with enough dirt roads and access points. But once weather hits, you're not driving anywhere. This is also like ice road truckers. The same concept. People do have to get goods and supplies in, but realistically, it's a risk, and there's a huge challenge to getting across this area. So going around, the outside of the coast is an option as long as it's not frozen over. But then most of it's airfare to get you up and back. And these are not big places. So we're not looking at like an international airport in
Right.
Barrow. You're looking at a runway that's possibly ice covered or snow covered in winter months. So you're landing on skis or sleds, and
Right.
you are landing on wheels like we would expect. And a tarmac for sure doesn't exist. It's a grass lot somewhere.
So Amanda has a point here. There says that there's a lot of UFO activity in the area. There's tons of shows about people who've had experiences.
Yeah.
Then her next thought is, I wonder, do aliens target an area less populated because less people can see them? Just a thought. Are they wanting to?
Sure.
Are they wanting to find people, or are they wanting to find what doesn't have people? I think it's an interesting point.
Well, we this was a topic or a part of the mystery spot episode. Like the belief of what the magnetic anomaly that the spot is actually something that's buried underground that could potentially be of alien origin.
Mm-hmm.
So that once upon a time, the Pacific West coast was unexplored. It's just woodland and,
Right.
and a lot of forestry. So Alaska is that too.
Right.
Still, where California is built up. So it's entirely probable or plausible. I mean, if you believe in aliens or if aliens do exist.
Right.
I tend to believe they do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Whether they're here or not is another question anymore, but they may have been at one point, and perhaps they left something behind.
Well, the other Skinwalker Ranch is the other place that there's thought to be something buried that's
anomalous,
non-human origin.
Yep.
So, which that's going to be an upcoming episode at some point. I've got a friend
who's promising me.
I know. I got a friend who I just need to set it up. I'm working on it.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be a fun one too. So yeah, I think to get back to Amanda's point, I definitely think that there is some because of the exclusiveness of that area, and the lack of people. That would be if I were ET, coming here and visiting, I would definitely want to be someplace where I'm not disturbed. And there's also a lot of natural resources left in this area, so perhaps it's a restocking place based on what they may need. Who knows?
Maybe.
That's pure speculation, of course. But if you can go somewhere and get something without being bothered by anybody else, why not?
And maybe they're friends with Bigfoot.
Maybe they are Bigfoot.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. See.
So,
I always go back to Star Wars, right? Chewbacca is the Wookiee Chewbacca. Like it's Bigfoot, right? So he can fly a spaceship. So why can't our big feet people things do it too? I don't know.
So apparently Amanda wants the Skinwalker Ranch episode as well. So
bring it on, Chad. Bring it on. No excuses now. You got to get it done. You took the lid off that bottle, so
yep,
it's on.
So
I'll say this. I really am intrigued by this area. Right. And I have been for a long time. I had a career path where I was working in a mass retail environment where I was remodeling retail stores. And one of our customers wound up being Napa Auto Parts. And not the stores per se, but the distribution centers that they have. And there's a couple of them around the country, and one of them is in Anchorage. And I was in charge of that whole project, but I got sidetracked by another project that we were launching at a small company you may have heard of called Walmart. And I had to take that project, which took me away from going to Anchorage. And I was mad. I really was, but luckily, things worked out for the best, I guess. We got the contract, which is fantastic. But, I missed that trip and someone else stepped in my position. But we were there for like 2 weeks straight kind of thing, maybe 3, depending on the size project. There's some downtime, to go explore places. And this was one I was so looking forward to because of knowing of this opportunity of things. But then you never know, my bad luck where I stepped the wrong way and opened a portal and disappeared. Who knows? But my luck would have been that.
So my question is, how many cars are in Alaska that they needed a distribution center for Napa?
3. Well, it's interesting, because it's not just cars; it's also equipment.
Right.
So snow machines, farm equipment. There is agriculture there. There's all
and
kinds of
and
things you need stuff for.
and you've got all the gold mining things, so you've got the
Yes,
big tractors and
lots and
things
lots of
like that.
equipment.
So
Yep. So
interesting.
it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, that one was their smallest in the company, but still they had a site there. And I deal with, in my current line of work, I deal with some customers in the state as well, and there's all kinds of things that they're up to. So it's just because it's ruralized and kind of isolated doesn't mean there's not industry happening there. With gold digger equipment. Yeah. So
Somebody's watching too many shows.
yeah. You read a book. No, it's all good stuff too. And it's quite interesting, especially like this gold rush show and so forth. And they're also up there, eking out a living in some of the wild places in the region. So taking the risks, and obviously no risk it, no biscuit moment. So obviously if they get what they're looking for, it can be quite lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
But the risk, of course, is the elements, the dangers of the wildlife, and the aliens watching them all the time. So you just never know. But people make a living doing this, and it's much like timber, the timber world and lumberjacking and so forth. But bringing in wood is a dangerous element as well. But people are up there doing it all the time. So hopefully not too much of it. We don't want to deforest the area, but people are working.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I find it intriguing. Again, this is one that I didn't know a whole lot about, so I'm glad you jumped on it. I mean, I did a little research to just write the thing up for the intro, but
Cover, right?
Yeah, I had no idea that this really existed. So.
And it's not a physical. That's not exactly the shape of it. This actually dips into Western Canada as well, into the Yukon territory. So, and we don't have a whole lot from that area because there's not a lot of people there as well. So, it could actually be a bigger area than a triangle. It could be a square. It could be something more.
Right.
It could be an anomalous blobby kind of thing, but. These are just landmark points that, much like the Bermuda Triangle, it has to be something to identify a triangle.
You mean
paranormal would be it's bigger.
Paranormal doesn't fit into a specific space.
It doesn't, or a box, or a definition in so many ways. So, good point. Yes, there's a true. Yeah, in the ocean is a whole other one. So. I saw something yesterday where a giant sequoia washed up on a beach, and it just uprooted and somehow made it into the ocean and made it back. And there's a person standing at it, which looks like an ant next to the trunk and the root system of this tree that doesn't belong on a beach. So there's mysteries in the ocean as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And aliens in the ocean.
Could very well be.
Why not? Okay, well, that's what I got, Chad. So it was a fun one for me to look at and dig into a little bit more. Probably went a little fast. Sorry. And thanks everybody for putting some thoughts to it as well. It's a curiosity.
There's more to be discovered out there.
Yes, and more to come for sure of it. I was speaking of shows. There was a Travel Channel or a History Channel show about the Bermuda Triangle last year, and there are active dive sites, looking for shipwrecks and plane crashes and so forth, and they are slowly starting to identify things that are coming out of the murk of the ocean, and.
Right.
Technology is better than it ever has been as far as scanning technology and so forth. So I would only think it's a matter of time until we turn our attention to this area of the world as well, and be able to find some things that we couldn't find with older stuff. And especially in the density of the areas. People still can only go so far. With the resources they have. So I think once we start really hitting the stride of technology and access, we'll find some of the missing things. and hopefully the missing people as well, to put some closure to the families that lost their
Right.
loved ones.
Well, with the advent of LiDAR and all those things,
Yes.
we can't see specific, individual people at this point, but we're
You
able to
can see
find out.
shapes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Amanda, we really we like your company. That's why we give you a hard time. So, but yes, we know you read a lot. So, and Jim is wondering if maybe we'll find Jimmy Hoffa with some of this
I'll tell
technology.
you, he's somewhere. He's probably sitting on a beach somewhere, but laughing at all of us for thinking he's in the end zone at the old Giant Stadium, all the places he's supposed to be.
So,
well, okay. So thanks everybody. Appreciate the indulgence in this one, and let's move on and start to wrap it up.
So, Jim actually helps us segue, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you very much, Jim, for jumping on there and helping us segue. Next week, we are going to have some people on who were at the Red Mill. We can't get everybody in at one time, but we're going to have some people on. We didn't gather a whole lot of evidence, but we have a lot of personal experiences that we had. So we're gonna talk about Red Mill next week. Jim, look for an invite. We're going to try to see if you're available to jump on the show with us and maybe give us some more information on some of the buildings and explain some of what we've experienced. So if you're available, we'd love to have you join us.
Yep,
so that's what we've got going on next week. For the upcoming Jotnik stuff, it's our standard public investigations at Boobies on the 21st, November 4th, and November 18th. This Saturday, depending on the weather, the Albatwitch Festival is in Columbia, Pennsylvania at Riverfront Park. Jamie?
River Park.
Okay.
River Park.
Yeah. So they're calling for rain, so we'll see what happens. But if it's not a horrible weather day, look for us there. Yep. October 26th is the Columbia Mardi Gras Halloween Parade. We will be in that. We're in Division 3 this year, right? I think it's in.
We usually are, yes.
Yeah,
what is the parentheses around Halloween? It's a Halloween parade. It really is. Know. It's an event.
I think that's how it's on their website. So I just copied.
It's Halloween. It is Halloween, man. This thing is so much fun.
It's actually not really a Mardi Gras parade, is it? It's not.
That's what the parentheses should be. Whatever. I grew up in Columbia, and I'm going to say this as a personal experience, but I remember this thing from being like 3, 4, 5 years old. So this parade has been around forever. And it is a signature event in this community, and everybody comes out for it. The streets are packed from the start to the finish of the parade.
Jamie, I didn't know they did parades back that far.
I'll beat you up. I'll punch you. If only Jerry were here, I think you'd get fired. Again. So it's a really fun night, and it's a really cool experience to see so many people out and about. And the main drag of Columbia is called Locust Street, and there are food vendors and all kinds of cool stuff to do. Everything's open. The historic market house is open. It's just great. So if anyone's in the area, even if you're not, come and visit us that night. Parade starts at 7, I believe, and it'll be like until 9. It takes a while, so it's really cool. Yeah. Sorry, segued. Sorry.
That's all right. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss the parade this year, but I've got kid responsibilities, and you understand.
Those pesky kids.
So,
the meddling kids. That's the Scooby-Doo moment.
Mm-hmm. So, we've got a bunch of stuff going on at the brewery. Like we alluded to earlier, I got a great recording this weekend. From the vat room. I thought I'd try something new and say, hey, can you knock on a table or something like that? And all of a sudden we had this loud bang come from like one of the big vats, and it shocked quite a few people in the room. So it was interesting.
The vat room has been happening the last 2 investigations. We've had a ton of activity and call and response activity. So it's quite interesting. So let's see what the next investigation brings.
So yeah, so if you're interested, grab tickets. They're available at the link there.
Yep.
We will, let's see, jump into our social media stuff. You obviously found us on Facebook, but check out TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. There's stuff available there. Still working on getting the website up and a way to contact us directly, but we're getting there.
Yep.
Everything takes time. So
if this were only our full-time jobs, right?
Yeah, one of us has to win this Powerball, Jamie, and then we can.
Well, it means I have to play it, right?
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Sorry. All right, it's on you then.
Yeah. So
if I don't see you again, I know what happened. This might be our last episode.
Nah. What are the chances that like you can get struck by lightning twice before you hit the Powerball or something? So
yeah, who knows? But we have to at least get to the Halloween episode. So
true. Yep.
You won't get that check right away.
Exactly. So well, any final thoughts, Jamie?
No, I don't. But again, I'm really grateful we got a chance to do this episode. I've been aware of it for a very long time, and finally have an outlet to talk about it a little bit. This is really cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening to me babble. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to Red Mill next week. I really am. I wish I could have made that investigation. And it is so good to be back again. Getting up and out these last two weekends.
Yep. But it's been great having you back, Jamie.
You're supposed to say that, right? So I appreciate that. But and I'm looking forward to, since we're talking about Red Mill next week, maybe we should look ahead to get them on the schedule for next year to get back again. So
definitely
looking forward to that opportunity. So
okay.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for watching. We can't do it without you. We really appreciate you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care.